A short review about new Fujifilm GFX. I don't have that in my hands, but I can say a few things about that, and I do believe whatever they say it's pretty much accurate. So, because I still have XH1, and I had many lenses of Fuji, so I don't think they would be substantially different. To me, looks the same. So anyway, looking at Fuji website, which is, I believe, one of the best way to look for information, because some people can change or make mistakes. I don't think Fuji would make mistakes. So anyway, this one, they have Fujifilm GFX100. Reach for more. Looking at this picture, honestly, my personal opinion, looking at this picture, I would think this camera is for big prints and big advertising, which is like close to the road, or maybe big advertising for surfing, for some restaurants, or for big pictures. Definitely when it comes to big prints, big pictures, and big posters, I would definitely look at this camera, because when it comes to big prints, that's where you need it. If you're just a kind of amateur, or you just like nice photos, you like nice image, if you have extra money and if you don't mind the weight of this camera, maybe it makes sense. You can make big pictures, big photos, and post somewhere. I mean, make maybe some kind of frame and put in your house. But if it's not advertising, if it's not commercial, I would say magazines and some commercial big prints, I don't think you need to look at that, honestly. Me personally, if I don't have a job to shoot fashion photography, if I don't have a job, any job for big prints, I honestly don't need this camera. I would spend 10 grand on something else. But if I would have like job related to advertising and some kind of marketing campaign involving big prints, involving some kind of big output, I would definitely look at this camera. Now, what is my thinking? First of all, I just tell a few things what I think, because I can keep in my hand and tell how it feels, but I pretty much know how it feels, because if you're looking at like say this one, GFX100, right? It's a new camera. If you're looking at specs, now looking at specs, well, first of all, you look at this one, image sensors. Okay, this is 43, almost 44 by 33, that millimeters. That would be like European way of measurement, and in South America, actually many countries they do have millimeters. But anyway, looking further, if I look further, okay, what is interesting for me? Well, first of all, you look at this one, raw, 14-bit, 16-bit raw. That's higher bits. Basically, it tells you about better quality. Now we have this one, exposure compensation, so it does have exposure compensation, because you know, like this 4x5, you cannot make bracketing. I mean, if I step a little bit further to 4x5 from medium format to high, this would offer 4x5 don't really have that kind of feature, so you can play with it. I mean, you can of course just, you know, use a meter and you don't need it, but for like some HDR shots you do need this. But anyway, let's see. Interesting for me. Okay, shutter speed for medium format, it's pretty high shutter speed possible, which is good, I think, because medium format normally did not have high shutter speed. Okay, now looking at I just go quickly through specs. Okay, now it works with this flash GFX100, so you can get a flash. So this camera will work with flash, which is already available. Okay, now LCD, well, 100% coverage normally is made for professional cameras. Okay, so we have movie. That's actually the first thing that impressed me. Basically what it has this one. That's a newer format, MPEG-4 AVC H264, and that 265. This 265, it's a new one. Okay, now sound 24-bit, which is pretty good sound, high quality. And this one, the most interesting. This camera can record 400 Mbps. So you can get 4K 30 frames per second, 24 frames per second at 400 Mbps. Okay, now full HD only 200. So like H1 would be 100 for HD and 200 for 4K, right? So this one goes to 400. Now this camera, actually, from what I see right now, this camera you can use for Netflix. If somebody is thinking about shooting something for Netflix, that would be pretty much Netflix requirement. If you get this camera, that's why many people were using Canon 1DX Mark II, because it has high Mbps. And Netflix, I will show you, Netflix is requiring high Mbps beside 4K in order to be qualified for Netflix. So from what I see, this camera is good for Netflix. So it meets, basically, from what I see, they didn't announce, but from what I see, it will be okay for Netflix. Okay, now we have Bluetooth. Bluetooth, I actually don't really like Bluetooth too much. It just something takes away some kind of operation from normal use to phone use, to this, to that. Okay, now SD cards. Okay, we have SD cards again. Okay, now we have SD cards, 400 Mbps. First of all, it will be hard to find that kind of SD card, because I think the highest I've seen like 320, but maybe they have right now, so expect if you want to shoot at 400 Mbps, your SD card should be in high Mbps. It's not only those they call them number 2 or whatever cards. It's beside the 2 you need to have high. Okay, now when I look at photography, yes, for photography this camera is offering a bunch of lenses that you might like, because the same lenses are used for GFX50R and GFX50S. Okay, the only thing is what I would say, yeah, for video it has a body, but honestly I don't see any video or cinematography lenses. You can try with this, but just by the look, how lens looks like, it's not really looking like a cinema lens, because cinema lens is more going like wider. Why do they have wider this? Because cinema lens, the best ones actually, they have to have like in the corner darkness the same as in the middle. So what they call it, the side light. The side light for photography, which is normally people correct. For video, it's too much problematic. High files, you know, those big files, correction for side light and all this. It's just too much, and the best way is just to use the lens with wide opening lens, and that wide opening lens would make corners lighter, so side light would be better. Okay, so now when somebody is measuring a T-stop for the light T-stop, you can measure in the middle and you can measure on the side. If it's on the side, not the same T-stop as in the middle, that's kind of honestly shitty lens. It's not there. So now kind of cheaper lens out there. So the best lens for cinematography would be the T-stop in the middle, T-stop in corners, the same T-stop. Whatever measurement device you use, it will be more like scientific, I guess, approach, but I'm sure you can find carefully somehow you can measure on the side and the middle. So the best would be the same, but if there is difference, as minimum as possible. Now these photographic lenses, you can achieve that if you close aperture, yeah, but otherwise most of photographic lenses, those straight ones, most of them, they do have side light issues. So, and another thing, these lenses are not really for zooming in, zooming out. So for video, if somebody likes zoom in shots, zoom out shots, I don't think it's going to work. So from what I see right now, Fuji is having a good camera when it comes to video. You can make good video. I believe this is good for low light and low grain, and a lot of those shots that people like to have at night, Fuji is pretty good for low light, and plus it has a big sensor. This sensor, I'll show you, it's like pretty much right now number 2 video sensor for the size, pretty much. Okay, so that's pretty much what I see. Pictures, make nice pictures. To me it's like 50s, 50R, well, better. So that's for, you know, bigger prints. You can make pretty much bigger prints. Whatever you had with 50s and 50R, now you can make double. And some new technologies, a little kick there, so you can make big one, good one. So that will be camera popular for big prints, from what I see. For small prints, for web prints, on the web you don't need big files on the web. Normal web files are small, so you don't really will have use for web. On the web you can use even like 2 megapixel camera. So anyway, now next step, why I was talking about this. Okay, now next step, what I do is I say Netflix camera requirements. Here you go, I have already. So Netflix camera, okay, partner help. Okay, now this one, camera requirements. You see, minimum data rate or bit rate of 240 mbps at 24 frames per second. Okay, the 10. So from what I see, that new 4K video with 400 mbps and all those, beats, and that has f-log. So basically, that camera, not the lens, I only say the camera, will meet Netflix minimum requirement. So they will go. They can pretty much, you can shoot. Well, they have here Canon too, which is, you see, they don't have 200 Canon. Only 300, 500, 700. Because 200, I've seen 100. I don't think it's enough. That's what it is. It's 300. Now, I'm going to show you the size. So what you would need to do, from what I see, if you have that Fuji GFX100, you would need to look at pretty much this lens, Alexa 65, but there is no big choice. You cannot get really cinema lens for that sensor. Okay, so you get the picture. That's Netflix cameras, what they have, and you can take a look. Now, looking back, okay, looking back like this, sensor size. Sensor size. I look at these 3 images. Okay, this one. Okay, so now looking at this, you see, that was Fujifilm 44 by 33. Say around 44 by 33. Okay, 44. So this 44 by 33. So that sensor is bigger than red, or this red weapon. You see, Panavision DXL, because this one 40 and 20 versus 43 33. So basically, if you have this lens, or somehow you might adapt. If you adapt this lens on that camera, you might have dark sides. So there is only one way you can adapt something, from what I see, is this one. If you really like cinema lens to put on GFX100, you would need to look at this ARRI Alexa 65, and that's what I was showing the picture. That's expensive. This lens, Alexa 65, it has ARRI lens and it has bunch of lenses, but those lenses are very expensive. You might end up paying like, I don't know, 30 grand for lens, 25. You can rent. It depends on budget and what they're looking for, but basically, whatever, from what I see, whatever can fit this 65, you can adapt to Fuji body. Otherwise, you might have real dark side issues, because most lenses right now are made for smaller image, for the smaller sensor. So like this one, 40 by 21, 36 by 24, 30 by 15, it goes less. Okay, so a lot of lenses right now are made for Super 35, and some lenses are made for like Sony full frame, or like Canon, those Canon cameras. So you might put, but those Canon cameras, I think they're Super 35, Super 35 slash, I would say, full frame. So anyway, so either if you try to adapt those lenses, it's kind of hard to adapt them. I mean, it's going to be dark. There is no way to make smaller lens on bigger sensor without dark side. So you would need to go opposite. It's better go bigger size sensor lens on a smaller sensor. Then you don't have dark side. So so for me honestly, for me, like, to summarize, for me GFX is basically, for now, it's strictly photographic camera, unless I will find a decent lens, cinema lens, that will fit that sensor size, okay? Or I could use those lenses already made for video purposes, but in the brain of many people it's not, good enough for the breathing or whatever they say. So the focus is not exactly the same as the cinema focus, the look. So if you are really picky, you need the cinema look, and you might don't find with Fuji lenses, and I believe they're really photographic lenses, they are not really cinema lenses. And the lens right now made by, if you look at lenses, okay, products, if you look at okay, let's say lenses, right? GFX lenses, you see all they have is like GFX, all those lenses. It's not like a cinema lens, it's just photographic lenses, macro, all photographic. Now for Fuji X, they do have this one, it says cinema lenses. So cinema, two kind of cinema, still no prime cinema. Well, you can maybe shoot with this one, but then that would be X what they call them, mount. So far Fuji is not offering anything for GFX mount cinema lens. That's why I'm saying, if you're really picky about cinema lens, you would need to consider adopting some kind of RE65. That's what I can say. So that would be my short review, I guess, thinking about new GFX. But definitely, if somebody would ask me for huge prints, I would definitely would step into that and probably rent or whatever, how client wants. But I would probably consider it for a big commercial marketing campaign, maybe some bands, music bands or performers like to have huge prints for some of their work or for some things, that I would look at this kind of product. Otherwise, if you're just kind of amateur or serious amateur or even professional, which is not doing that work, you might not need it. At some point I might need Canon DX2 with telephoto lens for sport, and depending on situation I might choose that. Depends on project. If I'm renting something, at some point I might rent this one, at some point I might rent DX2 with 400 or 600 lens. So it's up to you, up to your project. You can always try to rent and see for yourself, and it's better to spend little money and decide for yourself. It's like a test drive. You test drive 50 grand car before you buy, so you don't need to jump and buy all this. You can just test drive. That's all I can say. Have a nice day. Bye.